Well, hi there guys, happy hand sanding Sunday. Starting to flag a bit, so I thought, I'm getting to the end of the day. This is the second run of this. My first one, when I thought about it, wasn't right. So what this particular little vlog about is some hints and tips on hand sanding. This came about because I was asked if I could do some of the stuff that I've learnt. So I've mentioned before that I've picked up hints and tips and things like that, or things I've learnt when I've been doing my freehand grinding. The problem with that is that at the minute I'm working on a settee, which I'm sat here sanding at the minute, and I have a batch already which I did as I'm trying to keep a bit of continuation going. I'd got them ground out ready for heat treat, got the heat treat going because that can happen while I'm sat doing other work. So I'm ready, one of these are done, I'm ready, my next batch is ready, I can crack on and hopefully things keep rolling like that. But the problem with these is this set is, they've all got the Scandi grind on them, zero bevel. So I don't do that freehand, I do that on a jig so that I get the exact angle I want. So what I will do is, when I do my next batch, I am going to be doing some higher grinds on those, so I will do that video then. I'd also, when I first started this, I started talking about all sorts, but the reality is probably at the wrong time. So what this is just a few hints and tips on hand sanding. So trying to be fairly organised, I say, right, the first thing is get yourself comfy. Now, whether you prefer to stand up, this is one of the few things I do, well, the only things I do sat down is hand sanding, whether I'm hand sanding my blades, which I do just over to my left, or I sit here for doing my, for doing the handles. Now, if I just bring you around here, and I can show you here, this is my little Vise, I think it came from somewhere like Save Barn or whatever they're called, Bargain Barn, Save Barn, something or other, about $20, absolutely brilliant, by releasing a little ball catch there. It goes up or down. This is obviously, it just puts me in an ideal position for sanding the sides of the handles, which is obviously the main part that you do. As I said, I'm sat here, belly out, resting on the legs. Fuel tank for a knife making machine. Oops, sorry, my camera's wobbling a little bit. I'm afraid it's coming a bit loose again. I fixed the leg, now the bracket's coming loose. So yep, so like I say, first thing is get yourself comfortable. Oops, sorry, got my gloves up there from the other day. I do wear gloves sometimes. Got the fan going, it's rather warm. And look at this, a bit of an aside, but this is what happens when Ben comes in to the garage. And he pulls his toy to bits and he just sits there and whinges at me constantly, don't you? You've got some cotton hanging out your mouth, so it's proof. He just sits there and whinges at me constantly until I throw something for him. And at the minute we've got a lot of plums coming off the neighbour's tree and he keeps bringing them in, and if I don't throw them he eats them. It's not pleasant the next day, it's really not pleasant. But anyway, back to hand sanding. So like I say, get yourself comfy, somewhere solid, or else nothing worse than table shaking around when you're trying to sand and put a bit of pressure on. Get something like I say, it doesn't matter, you can use an ordinary vise. This just makes it easy because it goes sideways, as I showed you. Whether you stand up or sit down is completely material. Like I say, this is the only thing I do when I'm doing my knife making that I actually sit down for. So, because I don't think sitting down too much is not good for you. Just like standing up too long isn't good for you. So it gives me that a little bit of an in-between. So yeah, so it's somewhere solid. You know, and there are some proper knife making vices out there. There's not a lot in New Zealand. Something to bear in mind. Rest of the world. But then, obviously, the next thing then is the sanding papers, sanding sheets that you use. Now, after trialling all sorts, and I mean all bloody sorts for the last 2 years, right from the cheapest, and I bought job lots of all bloody sorts, the one I use at the minute is Rhino Wet from Indasa, and I believe that's the thing. Now, I will say for a start, I've bought these. I don't get anything from anybody, so anything I do show, I've bought it. I'm not supported or subsidised, anything. Everything I do, I've paid for. And this stuff, although it's not the cheapest, I found it cuts quicker than anything else and it lasts longer. And I use it for everything now, even the sand in the woods and things like that. And although the higher grits, they do clog up very quickly, and I don't like using water, I use water, that's a tip. If I'm doing G10, micarta, I use water because it cuts the dust out. With the wood, I don't like to do it. I just don't. So you just accept the fact. But realistically, you're not using a lot of sandpaper. And then what I do is in each grit, I go through all my knives, one grit at a time. So I don't take one knife through. I do all the knives at one grit and then up. and that way if anything I need to touch up on the machine, I'm using the same belt, so I'm only swapping it once. I can do all 4, or in this case I'm actually doing 5. I normally only do about 3 or 4 at the most, but I've just got an extra one I was just finishing a handle off on. So it means I'm not constantly swapping and changing. And what I do is I get the sheets, which I keep in my little trays. This is from 120 to 6, and then I've got another one with 8 to 12, which is the most common ones I use. And they're what I keep for doing the blades. And then I get a few out of there, and I cut them in half again into little strips like this. And that just means everything's there, everything's ready. I'm not constantly stopping and starting and cutting things up. I can just crack on. What I'll do is I'm just going to turn this blade over because I've just done this side, and then I can show you basically the technique I use. And there's no shortcuts, just like on a blade. If you're on the 120 and you look down, you see a bit of a scratch and you think, oh, it'll be alright. I'm going to go through 240, 400, 600, probably 800. Trust me, when you put oil on there, it will come back and smile at you. Yeah, so it's up to you the level of finish that you want. But just like on the blades, it's more difficult with the handles, because on a blade I sand straight for one grip, then I go to 45 degrees for the next, then straight, then 45, and you can keep going till you get rid of all the different direction marks. Don't do that on wood. But what I do is I've found that, bearing in mind initially the first, probably the 120s at least, you get plenty of time on that, so it might take a bit more, but generally one strip like this will do one side of the handle. Even if I think I've finished, and even I think it's good, I keep going till I've used the whole strip, rather than skimping. Just use a whole strip. It's not a lot at the end of the day, not a lot, but I keep going. That way I know I'm not going to get something coming back and haunting me a bit later on. A couple of other things I keep handy. There's a little piece of metal. Now, by putting paper around that, you can either use the edge for getting into like any little nooks and crannies or little things around the top edge of the blade. Also with that, I can use that to keep the so where you've got the like your bolts, whether they're Loveless, Corby's, pins, mosaics, whatever, and the way to keep those nice and flat there and stop them becoming prouder and prouder, because obviously they wear slower than the wood, is to use your little piece of metal with your sandpaper, get it nice and flat, and keep doing it. But only do about, say, 5 or 6 rubs, take it off, blow it off, because you'll take the metal off of there. And if you don't, if you keep going, what it'll do is drive black dust from the metal into the wood, and then it's a pain in the ass to get out. So literally just 5 or 6 or 4 or 5 if it's softer wood or darker wood, take it off, blow it away, keep it clean, and keep on going. Well, you end up with the right mess. I know, I found out. So that's that one. I have a couple of different size dowels, and they're basically for depending on the size of like the little profiles. These can be used just to help finish those off. Preferably, I try and keep these curves as large as possible. I will do smaller ones, but I prefer them if I keep them big as possible. What you tend to find is you don't tend to get the little dig-ins that you get with small wheel attachments and things like that, which are a lot harder to really make a nice finish of. The smaller ones I tend to keep more for making sure you've got like the nice little finger grippy areas, but things like this allow you to just give it that little polish off, a nice little finish. And like I say, with the metal, what I was talking about with the grooves is where you get a little area like here, yeah, rather than just leaving it manky, is you can actually put the paper on there and rub down. Now a little tip is when you put the paper around it, have the long bit to the front like that, the long bits to the front, and then you wrap it round, and then what you do is you literally only do maybe a little rub all the way along, and then just by pushing it, it's almost like a little ticky tape, and then you slide it along, and then you push it and slide it on, and it speeds it up massively. Rather than trying to take it on off, just being gentle with it and just giving that little slide, you get a fresh piece of paper, rub it all the way along, just once, but like all so it goes all the way along like that. Push it up all the way along. And it's only good for one on a sharp edge like that, but that'll actually get into all those little nooky areas, little nooky cracky areas. Right, I'm going to try and drop you down here. Welcome back. Now, what I tend to do is, the reason I like the long thin bits like this rather than just ripping a chunk off, is what I tend to do is you can hold it like this. Oh, shush, Bensky, go away. Isn't he a pest? Yeah, and then the idea is you rub and you keep rubbing, and then what I'm doing is I'm watching the dust that's developed, and as soon as I think, oh, I'm not making any more dust, I just slide my fingers, slide my fingers down that paper to a fresh piece and carry on. And sometimes, depending on the type of wood and whether it's stabilised or not, or the size of your pins, you might be rubbing for 10 or 15 of these, 20 maybe at the most, and then off you go. Keep getting that dust off, or else all you're doing is moving the dust around and then clogging the fresh part up. Not very pleasant. I should be wearing a dust mask, but I'm going to get something sorted eventually. There we go. And you can just keep on doing that, and then the idea is, as you can see then, what I'm doing is, see, I'm working my way down the piece of paper, and I'm not constantly stopping and starting and changing, and that just sits here. So it sits nice and flat, nice and firm, and I've got plenty of weight over it, and as you can actually see, a little bit of a blip there. I turned it off, and actually all I was trying to do was turn it round. There we go. So yeah, so basically what that means is that when I'm here, though you can't see my elbows, unfortunately, but I'm, rather than being up here and sanding here or really low down, I'm just, my arms stood up at sort of a 90 degree like this. Oh, so I need a cameraman and a sound crew and a development person and an editor and shit. Anyway, so I'm at like 90 degrees, and that actually gives you quite a comfortable, you can put a bit of body weight behind it, and basically what I'm doing is I'm moving my shoulders. So I'm not trying to move my arm or my wrist, it's moving from the shoulders. So you're using big muscles. So you can keep going, which is a good job because it's now 4 o'clock and I've been at this since 10 o'clock this morning. So with a quick break for a touch of quiche and coffee from Madame before the most beloved and her mother went out shopping. God, I mean on a Sunday. I'm sanding Sunday and they've gone shopping. So yep, so here I am, and I just keep on working my way down. So I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I could say. But getting everything ready, giving yourself a nice comfortable position, having everything to hand so you're not constantly moving around. It's a long enough job anyway. So anything that can make it a bit easier, you know, like now I just sit here and I just drift away. You know, drift away and keep coming back and having a little bit of mindful meditation. That's when Buggerlug's here. They've cleaned the kennel out. Normally I have him in the kennel and through the day, don't I? Just sometimes you come in, don't you, and pester my life out. See, I'm being stared at now. He's giving me that "you will play with me" look. Anyway, carry on. So yes, so that's a few little hints and tips on this. Like I say, don't skimp on your sandpapers. Whatever you do, get yourself comfortable, get something solid to put your knife in, preferably nice soft jaws. This one particular one isn't, this is one I'm actually doing up, but generally as well, protect the blades, they scratch very easily. So you wouldn't think they would with hardened steel, but it's amazing, you know. A little bit of grit, especially, you know, obviously in a workshop area, there's bits of grit, bits of metal and things like that, and they are abrasive. Simple as. There will be a quick doo-doo as we transition, and when I've finished doing this, I will show you what I do after I've done the paper levels. So with that, I'll crack on before it gets too late. I'll be here all night. So, well, we get to the end of the sweating, the end of the sanding sheets stage, and basically the next stage for me is medium wire wool. I believe it's a 00 wire wool, and it's basically a good buff with the wire wool. A good rigorous muff. Brings the liners up quite nicely as well. Ready to finish a whole day's hand rubbing. A good bit of buffing and sweating. So I've done all the others already, so I can show you where I'm at. But basically this is the last process before. What I'm going to do next is I'll put them in a little jar and apply 50-50 boiled linseed oil and terps or white spirit. I do it 50-50 because a lot of people recommend that, and it's a good way to help it soak in a little bit better, and it also acts as a drying agent. It evaporates a bit quicker. But you need boiled linseed oil, not plain. Plain linseed oil doesn't polymerise the same, and polymerises is when it goes hard. So I'll show you what we're doing. So basically, get all the little bits of metal filings off. And so this is the last stage before that. Must be getting near tea time. Ben started whinging again. Right, so now I have here the mix of boiled linseed oil and paraffin. Nothing magical. Lots of people, loads and well, tons and tons of people use it. I'll just have a quick show is before I do that. So this is the knife I was just sanding. So I hope that. So it's a nice little piece of cowrie. Now this is stabilised cowrie. So some of the woods are stabilised, some I don't. But basically, hopefully, there's a little bit of oil on there. And it's almost like a little bit of magic starts to happen, all the grain comes out. Obviously, I'm only doing this to show. So obviously it's a bit pointless doing this and then putting it in a jar and pouring linseed oil of it. But this was just to show. I like to see, you know, when you've seen people doing things and you've watched them going through. So, but as you can see, there's some quite nice, you know, quite nice grain on there. And once you start to get a bit of the linseed oil, it looks quite nice. Now, this is one. I've just finished this one a little bit earlier. And this is a piece of Pahutakawa. And some rather nice, a little bit of grain. I've just got some of this Pahutakawa, and it's got some rather nice spalting in it. So I'm actually trying to stabilise it. That's in the jar being soaked with the resin at the moment. Because ordinary Pahutakawa is a very good, tough, resinous wood. But obviously once it's got all the spalting in it, that's going to weaken it. So what I'm hoping is that will take enough resin in to strengthen it, because that gives it some real character and some real pretty colours. Because a lot of the timbers, a lot of the native timbers in New Zealand are not particularly exciting. A lot of the good stuff's gone. So when you've got, but it is very good timber. There's some very, very good timbers. I've got some Puriri, Totara, Manuka and things, and a very good, strong, tough timber. It's like a bit like in Europe, a bit like oak and beech and ash, things like that. There we go. And as you can see, a bit of, hopefully as you can see, some nice colouring coming out on there. It's a nice piece of wood. Be a nice little hunting knife for somebody, that. Right, now get this last one in, I hope. There we go. And basically these just go into a glass jar, and in we go. Try not to pour it all over the blades, and basically I'll just put enough in here so I just cover the tallest handle. That's all it needs. There's very little will soak in, very small amount only will soak in. There we go. It won't rust the blades or anything, so don't worry. The only thing you've got to be careful of is when you do use it, is not to leave it on. So basically what will happen, they will stay in there now until tomorrow morning. It's dinner time now, so they'll stay in there till tomorrow morning-ish whenever I get my ass out here. Although I've got some grass to cut tomorrow, so I might be doing that. But, oh shush, I'm talking, Bensky Boodles! Don't you eat that plum, put that plum down. Minger. So they'll stay in there till tomorrow morning. Then they'll come out, and then what I'll do is I'll actually dry them off completely with some, whoops, just a bit of paper towel. Don't leave it on there, don't leave a coating on there. That stops it from polymerising, and all it goes tacky and gooey, and then you have to then sanding it or rubbing it all off. So wipe it completely dry so it feels completely dry. Then I'll leave that for at least 24 hours, maybe even 48, until I get round to them again. Then what I will do is I then swap to some the finest wire wool, which is treble O wire wool. Drop a linseed oil, and I'll use that, and I'll use the fine wire wool, and I'll give the hands a really good rub with this. And then that brings up a bit of surf, a bit of the dust, helps to seal the grain even more. They'll be left again for 24 hours, and I'll do it again. And then that's basically, that will be it, they'll be done. So although, you know, there's maybe 10 minutes a day input for the next 3 days, it's 3 days it'll take till they're finished. So they can sit over there. And that's basically the process. Now I use the same process whether I'm using stabilised timbers or not. Because no matter what anybody says, you know, the stabilising basically fills the cells within the timber, I believe, not so much the interstitial areas. So that's what I've read anyway. And I've actually had, I had some stabilised timbers in here, going off the topic here, but I had a couple of stabilised timbers that I'd done, and I glued them to liners, and they warped. So I googled it, and yes, that does happen. It's definitely something that happens. And I think what had happened is because I'd glued them to the liners on one side, obviously all the other bits just took on a little bit of water. It was just enough to give a little bit of a bow. So anyway, so I do that anyway. I haven't found any problems with it. And a bit of belt and braces, doesn't hurt anything. So there we are. Whoa, long day done. So I hope that was reasonably interesting. Like I said, it's quite a simple process from here. A lot more time involved than input. So, you know, it's quite time intensive rather than labour intensive. Obviously, whatever linseed oil is left in the jar, just keep reusing it, put it back in your bottle. There's no reason to throw it away. All the scales, all the timbers are dry. They've been, you know, soaked. They've all, so there's no resin and things going to come out. So you're not going to spoil the linseed oil. And from a big lump of wire wool, that's all. I'm actually wearing more of it over me at the minute. It's amazing how it. So when you get your wire wool, don't just pull off a little piece like, you know, just pull off a little piece. You need a lump. Disintegrates while you're using it. So with that, I hope that was reasonably interesting. And what I will do is the next video I do will be about when I'm doing these blades, but not about the blades, because like I said, I was asked to do about the hints and tips for doing freehand and higher grinds. But what I will do is before all the handstanding starts, a few hints and tips of things that I've found really make life easier when it comes to putting the scales on. Both gluing the liners to the scales and then the scales to the handles. So I will do that next. So with that, I will sign off. Hope you had a good weekend. It'll be probably Sunday now here, so probably Tuesday, Wednesday by the time I get this out. So hope you're having a great week and a great weekend. And thank you for watching, guys. And if there is anything anybody else wants me to put out there, like I say, it's all very simple, basic stuff. It's where I'm at really, and I'll do my best. So thank you, and catch you on the flip side.